Welcome to One Quick Question with Infomedia, your source for answers to your questions about websites, digital marketing, and more. I'm your host, Carrie Rollwagon. I am here today with Jana Stevens. Welcome, Jana.
Hello, thank you.
So first, tell people a little about what you do at Infomedia, and then we'll hop into today's topic.
Yes, so I am the head of project strategy at Infomedia, so I lead the project management department.
Awesome. And at work, you're very organized and very dependable and just definitely a person that I'm like, Jana's got it. Like even we have a meeting, group meeting where everybody's like, well, do we need to put this on our action steps? So we follow up. And when it comes to you, I'm always like, we don't need to put that. Jana said she'd do it, so it's going to get done. Which I don't think is like the opposite of what we're going to talk about today, but I don't know that those personalities like naturally mesh. Because today we're going to talk about what you do outside of work, which is roller derby, correct?
Yes, that's right.
So you have kind of a persona that you have at Derby, is that correct?
Yes, that's right. So very much like acting in a play or on stage, we all get to develop our own skater personas as well, including our own names, our derby names, and our numbers.
So what is your derby name, and can you tell us a little about your personality?
Yes, my derby name is Janarchy, and it was inspired by the fact that I was very much a punk kid as a teenager, and honestly, I still am. And so listened to, songs like Anarchy Burger by the Vandals and like lots of just like Against Me and Sex Pistols. And so all of those bands kind of shaped me growing up, and they also shaped my derby persona.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I have to be a little more professional when it comes to office stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's my outlet to let that punk personality out.
I think that makes sense. So probably I would guess Jana and Janarchy are both very capable.
They are capable.
But
yes, both are capable.
Are there any other things that you have in common or that are very different about your...
Janarchy is a little meaner, I think.
I wouldn't classify you as mean at all at work. So.
Thank you. That's very kind. Maybe I'm harder on myself then.
Yeah, that's fair. Maybe, is it like when I call up my inner critic, are you like, don't listen to Janarchy?
Yes. She's kind of the devil on my shoulder.
Yeah.
But yes, Janarchy is a little bit tougher, a little bit more direct, a little bit meaner, as I said. Also wears a lot more makeup than regular Jana does.
That's true. Well, okay, so if somebody's listening, you're like, what even is like roller derby? Can you tell us just sort of what it is?
Yes. So a lot of people have the misconception that there is a ball in the game of roller derby. So I just want to get that out of the way right now. There is no ball in roller derby. Yeah. And a lot of people also have the conception that it is very much like kind of wrestling, like a showy kind of, not a real sport.
Yeah.
But what we do is very physical and it's very real. But back, I think in the 70s, people would watch roller derby on TV, and that was banked track roller derby. So there was kind of an angle that people would skate at. I skate on flat track.
Yeah.
But also they were throwing punches and they were pulling hair and like grabbing ponytails and throwing people across the track. And that was a little bit more showy, but that is not the way the game that I play is played.
Yeah. So is it the same idea, or what's the objective?
Yeah. So the objective is to be the team that scores the most points by lapping players on the other team. So each team has at most 5 players on the track, and the game is divided into 2 30-minute halves, and then the halves consist of 2-minute periods called jams. So at the beginning of a jam, both teams line up on the track. You have 2 jammers, one for either team, and you recognize the jammer because they wear a star on their helmet. The jammers are the ones that are able to score the points. And so the jammers line up behind the jam line is what it's called. And then the other players for each team are the blockers. So their objective is to prevent the other team's jammer from getting through while also trying to help their own jammer get past the opposing blockers.
Okay.
There are a lot of rules. There's a lot to remember. And the first time that I ever participated in a scrimmage and the whistle blew, I was like, I have no idea what to do. This is so overwhelming. Like everything
Yeah.
was running through my head at once. But you get the hang of it as you scrimmage more and more. But it's definitely very physically demanding.
Yeah.
So after the first jammer that breaks through the pack of blockers is called the lead jammer, and the lead jammer has the ability to call off the jam. So a lot of times we use that in strategy to prevent the other team from scoring points right at the last second. And the jammers just skate around the track, and they get points for every blocker or opposing blocker that they lap. So their hips have to get past the blocker's hips in order to score points.
Okay.
And so they can go as long as they want to for that full 2 minutes in the jam, or they can call it off early.
Yeah. And that's a lot of skating.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hadn't really skated in a long time until we went. A bunch of us from Infomedia went, and I was like every 10 minutes, I was like, I'm good. I'm gonna take a break. Like,
I still do that at practice.
Yeah. Well, you've been doing this for a while, right? So how long have you been like interested in doing roller derby?
Yeah, so I got interested in it actually back in high school. Then the movie Whip It came out, which I think is a lot of people's kind of entry into knowing about roller derby in my generation. And so really in high school, I didn't know if there were teams around that I could participate in. And then in 2017, I actually learned that Birmingham had a team. So I went to recruitment for the Birmingham team, Tragic City Rollers. Played for... I didn't even get to play in any games. I did recruitment. I skated for maybe like a month and a half and then sustained an injury.
Yeah.
So I didn't think that I was going to be able to play. It was a labral tear in my hip flexor. So it was a big deal.
Yeah.
If it had been a little worse, I would have had to have had surgery.
Yeah.
So I was like,
wow.
those dreams are over. But the good thing was I met my partner through that. He's the head ref for the Birmingham team. So decided to step away from derby, did a lot of weightlifting, kettlebell training, and then eventually during the pandemic, I actually decided to pick skating back up because
Everybody
I
was
like,
skate.
yes,
Yeah,
I'm like it
But
blew
you're like-
up on TikTok, on Instagram.
Yeah.
Like roller skating was the trend, and it was so hard for people to find skates
Yeah.
during that time.
And when you already did it, it's probably like, oh my gosh, of
Yes.
course I'm going to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a really good way for me to get out of the house and just kind of do something physical without it feeling like it was really exercise. But then I said, okay, well, I actually have built these skating skills back up. My hip is totally healed. I am going to go back to derby. And I decided to skate with Tuscaloosa's team, Druid City Derby, just so that my partner and I could have something different because we see each other at home. We're like, let's just have something after work practice where we have our own
Yeah.
separate things.
Yeah.
So started with Druid City Derby in 2021, and that's where I skate today.
That's awesome. So if somebody wants to like watch you skate, can they do that? Do they have to? Where do they go? How do you engage with this as like as a spectator, I guess?
Yes. So our games are called bouts, and typically the roller derby season actually kind of lasts for a long time, and there's not really an official season. So typically you'll see leagues start to schedule games usually in February, and the games will span through maybe September or October. And we have to do a lot of promotion about our bouts on social media, through our website, through flyers that we hang around Tuscaloosa. So if you are interested in watching roller derby, there are 5 teams in Alabama. So follow them on social media. And typically the games are held, obviously, at rinks. It kind of makes it a little bit difficult. We have our bouts at Super Skate down in Tuscaloosa. The Tragic City Rollers here in Birmingham have their bouts at the Boutwell Auditorium. So following on social media and just kind of trying to engage with the leagues that way is the best way to find out where we're playing.
And sometimes they stream, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Our team does a really good job. We have some people on our social media committee that are very familiar with streaming. So we stream, I think we streamed all of our home games this season on YouTube.
Yeah.
So a lot of leagues will do that as well.
Cool. And then if somebody is thinking they want to get actually involved and join a league, like how do you do that or join a team?
A lot of leagues will also promote their recruitments
Mhm.
on social media. So because anybody can learn how to play roller derby, it is not just for people who already know how to skate.
Mhm.
So the reason that leagues will hold recruitment is so that people can really come in with other people on their skill level who may
Mhm.
not be as comfortable on wheels, and have members of the league kind of show them, like, here's what derby's all about, here are the skills that you need to learn. And having recruitment means that people do have kind of a close-knit group that they can grow with.
Yeah.
So look for posts about recruitment.
And you've done some things for your team also that have like kind of do overlap a little bit with work, right? Like are you like aren't you in charge of money or like sometimes you have to do like website stuff?
Yeah,
Or...
so I was the treasurer on we're a nonprofit. So we operate with a board, and I was the treasurer of our board. Now I am president-elect. So the way that our board kind of works is we have the incoming president, current president, and outgoing president that all kind of serve in advisory.
Yeah.
And so I am waiting to become president in
Yes.
the next term. And then I'm also a chair of our social media and website committee. So
Mhm.
I built our new website that launched a couple of months ago.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find a lot of times that is helpful too. And I think you and I have talked before about how working on a website ourselves like also helps us with clients because it just reminds you of what it feels like to be in that position where you're
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, I got to get all this stuff together. And
Yes.
like,
And even though I always say your website doesn't have to be perfect in order to launch it, you can launch it and then continue to grow it. I was guilty of sitting there being like, oh, I really wish I could make this change and this change on the site and then launch it. So I had to keep telling myself, no, I can continue to make changes afterward.
Exactly. Well, what if somebody's like, I'm not sure if derby's for me, but I want to get into skating? Like, is that, do you just go to a rink and rent skates? Would that be a good first step? Is it better to buy your own? Like,
Definitely try it before you buy any equipment.
yeah.
A lot of people who purchased skates back in the pandemic days are now selling those skates because maybe they skated for a couple of months and then decided that was not the hobby for them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you invest in quality equipment, that's not a small investment. So you really want to make sure that it's a hobby that you're going to continue with.
Yeah.
So my recommendation is, yes, support your local skating rinks. Go rent skates. They're going to have a couple of different style of skates to use. You can either get inlines or you can get quads, which is what I use. And you can also, here in Birmingham, we have City Walk, which people will think of City Walk and the skate park and get really intimidated, but there's also a flat skating rink. So if you want to skate, but you don't want to go down ramps or like dive into bowls, there are options that are outdoors as well.
Yeah, I was guilty of that. I thought it was like for professional, or people who were like really good and whatever. And I didn't realize there was a rink there, but that's really cool too. It's cool to see people from like all around the city in that same space. So.
For sure. And there are so many different styles of skating that you'll see there. So you have people who are doing the jam style dance skating, people who do the artistic jumps and waltzes, and then people like me who are doing the derby or the aggressive park kind of skating. So it's very, very cool to see all those different styles.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all of this with us.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking. I love talking derby.
Yeah. Well, One Quick Question is developed and hosted by me, Carrie Rollwagon. Our producer is Elena Harmon. Jana used to produce the podcast, actually. And our theme music is by Brad Davis. Our sound and video engineering are done here in the Infomedia studios. So you can find show notes or find out what Infomedia can do for your website at infomedia.com/quickquestion. And we like to leave you with this thought. A real expert helps to clarify, not confuse. So don't take website advice from someone who can't give you a straight answer.